So, as a part of today's agenda, these are the points we are going to discuss. We'll talk about enterprise structure in the fusion applications and what is the meaning of roles and what are the different type of roles we have and how the users can be managed in the fusion applications, what are the different type of users we have and what is the difference, and what does it mean by functional setup manager and how we can use in the system process. And we'll talk about what is rapid implementation, how the data conversion Oracle made in fusion application when you compare with EBS data conversions. So these are the points we are going to discuss. Once we're done with that, in the tomorrow session we can start with the system. We'll start with the user creation, project creation, and we can go by some sequence of configuration which need to be followed in case of fresh instance, what approach we follow, and how we can start with the production related configuration. That approach we just implement in our sessions to understand and to complete the setups and to test the process flows. Okay, the first point here is enterprise structure. Okay, fusion enterprise structure. So fusion enterprise structure here, before we talk about fusion enterprise structure, let's talk about EBS multi-org structure. Okay, in EBS, when we talk about the multi-org structure, the top level will have a business group, right? Business group, BZ. Under business group, we can have primary ledger. Under primary ledger, say PL. Just I'm not taking into hierarchy, but just I'm writing one by one. Since we know these points very well, just for discussion, I'm just writing one by one. Then legal entity. Under legal entities, operating units, right? And under the operating units, we have a inventory organizations, IO, which we call. Okay, this is how we have will be that when we are going to just create the business environment in the system. This is how just will be mapping the business requirement, where we can map, where you can maintain the employee information with the definition of business group and the transaction related key elements, okay, which are required to capture each and every transaction through definition of primary ledger, where that complete transaction data can be stored. The legal entity for reporting purpose, which refers the company registrations, and operating unit where the real business transactions will be recording and where we can have a control on the transaction process, where we can segregate and maintain the data based on the business operations. The inventory organization, it's just warehouse management, which we can map into the system with this concept. So this is how we have. When you just look into this, this is the same hierarchy we'll have a BZ under BZ, primary ledger under primary ledger, LE under LE, OU under OU, inventory organization. This is how the hierarchy we have. So this in EBS we are calling as multi-org structure. Okay, multi-org structure. Multi-org structure means multiple. Instead of writing as multiple, just in short we are writing multi. Instead of organization we are calling as org. That means the actual name is multiple organization structure. The same in fusion how we have. In the fusion, this we call as, instead of calling as multi-org structure, we are calling as enterprise structure. Nothing wrong, just in fusion EBS also you can use the term, but just the standard, the naming convention Oracle is giving as a multi-org. If you are going to call as enterprise structure in EBS, that doesn't falls under some wrong naming convention. So in fusion we are calling as enterprise structure. So in case of EBS, this is how we have the multi-org structure related different units. In the same way here, how we have here. So in the enterprise structure on the top level, in multi-org top level we'll have a business group. In the similar way here we have a top level enterprise. So under enterprise you can have a divisions, Under divisions, you can have a primary ledger. Under primary ledger, you can have legal entity. Under legal entities, you can have business units. Under business units, you can have inventory organizations. Okay. So when you compare and discuss about these points in EBS, so on top we'll have a business group. The business group to manage the HR information. Okay, to manage the HR information, and where you can map that payroll related flex fields and other employee number generation, etc. All this to manage the people related information. So in EBS, you can create a number of business groups. For each country, you can create one business group, or for multiple countries, you can create one business group. That completely depends how you are going to design the solution to manage their employee information. So whatever it may be, like you can create more than one business group. Okay, you can create more than one business group in case of EBS. But in the fusion, as a part of enterprise structure, for one instance you can have only one enterprise which will refer the client. Okay, if we are going to have only one enterprise for one instance, if the same client is going to do the implementation for multiple countries, how that can be managed? Entire instance level, you can specify HR and payroll process related controls at enterprise level. The rest country specific definitions you can design in the system with the different definitions, organization definitions, and we have a concept called as LDZ, legislative data groups, which can be used for managing the payroll processes, which is country specific. With those, okay, solutions, you can manage the country specific people maintenance and the payroll process maintenance. But by default, for in one instance you can have only one enterprise. For one instance you can have one enterprise. Within that enterprise, in how many countries, for how many countries we are going to do the implementation, accordingly you can maintain the relevant definitions related to HR and payroll process. And here the next element is divisions. Say the client is operating the business only in India. So if they are operating the business within the India, and take another example, they have a different businesses, different vertical of businesses. So each vertical of business you can take as a division. Each vertical of business you can take as a division. You can take as something, some consulting service as one division, and you can take some textiles as another division, and some BPO services you can take as another division. This is how each and every vertical of business you can take as a division. If you want to include the division also as a part of your enterprise structure, when we can have a division as a part of enterprise structure, if you are going to use division as a segment within your chart of accounts, in that case, if you want to use the same just for representation as a part of your enterprise structure, you can use, and you can use in the enterprise structure without using division as a segment within our chart of accounts. Even if you are going to use division within your enterprise structure, financial point of view, there won't be any impact, there won't be any use. That can be just will be appearing as a part of organizational hierarchy, where that can be used maybe HR related process and project related processes. Other than that, finance point of view, until unless you are not going to have a division as a part of, say, chart of account segment, there won't be any use even if you have that division as a part of enterprise structure. So just one example we taken as division can be represented with a specific vertical of business. If not that is the case, say for example client is running the operations across the globe, in that case, so specific geographical area you can take as a one division. Say you can take one division as APAC as one division, and EMEA you can take as another division. This is how just the business which you are doing across the globe, the based on the geographies you can classify. The geographies classification you can do, each classification you can take as a one division. And finally, the division is optional when you are going to create enterprise structure. It's a very optional component. you can see in the most of the implementation, you see it is not going to be used. Okay, enterprise anyway one, that is Oracle will provide the default enterprise based on your HR and payroll business process. You can change the elements and you can change the controls, you can change the defaults how you require. And division is optional. If you want to use, you have to make sure that first you are going to have as a segment within your chart of accounts. Then if you are going to have as a part of your enterprise structure, you can take the advantage of that. Otherwise, without maintaining division as a part of chart of accounts, if you are going to have as an enterprise structure level, there won't be any use. Finally, that is optional component. We know the primary ledger. Okay, the same meaning remain here. The primary ledger which we use to record the business transaction, where we can store all the transactional data for reporting purpose. The legal entity, it remains in the same concept, but when we are working on the system, there are few more points which you have to understand, which will get connected with the legal entity. Where the legal entities we should map with related to HCM, human capital management, nothing but HR related definitions, even if you are going to work on finance. We'll see those as a part of system process. And business unit. In EBS, what are the operating unit we have? Just the name they changed. Okay, the naming operating unit, the name they changed to business unit, which we call as BU here. Okay, the OU we are calling as BU. So in the system process, how we create the business unit and how further we'll be mapping certain other information, that is slightly different when you compare with EBS. That anyway we'll see in the system when we start with the business unit definition and other definitions. Inventory organizations, yes, inventory organizations remain as inventory organizations. Okay, so but in case of EBS, inventory organizations and everything will be creating as a part of HRMS applications. But here for inventory organizations and all, we don't have any inventory, Oracle inventory. Okay, in Fusion applications, we have product management. In EBS, we have a Oracle inventory applications where you can do all these definitions, you can do the inventory related transactions. In Fusion, there is no Oracle inventory application. They replaced the Oracle inventory with Oracle product management application. We'll see those. We'll be working on the P2P cycle. At that time, we'll create all the inventory, master inventory, actual inventories, and sub inventories. Will create the items, will create the requisition, purchase order, receipt, delivering the material. Okay, invoice creation with the matching with the PO receipt. At that time, we can understand more detail level. At that time, we can touch base on this inventory related information. So this is just we have enterprise level. On the top we have a enterprise. Under enterprise we'll have a divisions which are optional. Under divisions we can have a primary ledgers. Under primary ledgers we can have legal entities. Under legal entities we can have business units. Under business units we can have inventory organizations. Out of this enterprise structure, divisions are optional. Okay, rest when you compare with EBS, more or less the enterprise structure also similar to multi-year structure. Enterprise exactly is not equal to business group. The business group logic you can build within the enterprise by using the HCM solution. So divisions here we don't have, but you can maintain as a division as a segments in case of EBS, but there won't be any option where the same exact division segment related representation you can have as a part of enterprise definition. I mean multi-org structure definition. If at all you want to create as a division, yes, you can create as a just a division name and you can classify it as a division. So that's how that could be possible in EBS case also, but here they given as a part of structure only. And the legal entity remain legal entity, operating unit here we are calling operating unit definition as well as and other relevant setups. It makes some difference compared to EBS. We'll see that this will remain same, but the place from where we create inventory organization fusion is product management or product information management or product management hub you can call. Okay, these are the few points we have to understand when we talk about enterprise structure. Any questions on this, please? Okay, we'll be creating the same what we are discussing here. So we'll look into the enterprise division, primary ledger, legal entity, business unit, inventory organization. So we are going to do
Laxman.
everything in our own environment. We are not going to depend on some predefined definitions which are available in the system. So everything will create from scratch and will configure and will be working on that environment only. Yeah, please. Sorry.
Yeah, Lakshman, regarding divisions, I want to know. So it has to be practical usages regarding the chart of account. It has to be a segment in my chart of accounts. Is it
Exactly.
correct understanding?
Yes.
So
It's good.
why do we show it above the primary ledger? So is it
Under
like
division, yeah, I got your point. See, for example, if you take the case where you are going to do your business operations across the globe, and say you are going to use global chart of accounts, okay, global chart of accounts. In that case, so divisions will belongs to the each, and say for example you are taking APAC as a one division. Okay. Within the APAC, what are the different
okay?
countries we have? For each country, will have a primary ledger, right? In that scenario, the under divisions will have a primary ledgers.
Okay.
Okay, that's how that is mapped. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thanks. So, any other question?
Lakshman,
Yes, please. Yeah.
Lakshman, I have a question. Yeah. Suppose in my enterprise, I'm doing a business in different global location, but without want to do it without using division. Is it possible?
See, practically, just if you look at just as an example number, telling. If you look at 10 implementations which took place on cloud application, Fusion Cloud, okay, max in 10 you don't see division segment. Okay, you don't see division as a part of your enterprise structure. Okay, so that much, I mean, that's how the reality you can see. They given the scope to include division in the enterprise structure. The same you can take into your chart of accounts, or else division you can anyway, any segment you can take into chart of accounts. You can take if required, if you want to include the same segment related representation in the structure level. In case of you are going to have a global implementation where you are going to use the common chart of accounts. Okay, so in that case you can use. There won't be very great advantage if you are going to have a division. If you are going to have within the segment financial impact and transaction tracking possible. Otherwise, just you can, if you want to have, you can have it, or else ignore. Through that you will be able to do some managerial reporting. That sort of representation you can plan by defining the reports, okay, as per the process. Ideally, there is no great advantage of the division. That is the reason they just given, as well as they made it as a man optional.
So Lakshman, client having global locations with employees deployed in different geographical locations, and if they wanted to have a single ledger to track their financials, and the employee benefits are by country. So in that case, actually, how it will be structured actually in EBS model? BG level legislations are created and benefits are maintained, and
See, when
the
you talk
financial
about,
ledger it was,
yeah,
yeah.
I got your point. When you talk about legislations will be created country specific. Legislations are created country specific. So when we are going to have any just the legislation, when you say here legislations more into payroll process. Okay, legislative data groups. We have a concept called as LDG, legislative data groups, which will be just creating as a part of HCM solution, which will be pointing your payroll country specifications, and the same need to be mapped with the particular legal entity also. That process we'll see. So here, if you are going to have a process related to employee or anything related to multiple countries, so for each country you have to create the separate legislated data group. Accordingly, you have to define the ledger specifications also. You have to define the ledger specifications. Definitely, you have to maintain separate ledger, because you are going to have a element called as currency different for each and every country. For that reason, you have to maintain separate ledgers. So that's how accordingly you can do that. Cost you can transfer to the distributed cost for the employees can be transferred to specific country ledger only. You have to maintain separate ledgers.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
fine. So finally, there is no huge difference when you compare with the EBS multi-arc structure. Okay, slightly just you have to understand the naming convention and what it refers. That's what we have to understand. For one instance, you can have only one enterprise. Under that enterprise, country specific logical data segregation can be done with organizations definitions, and then the payroll process, some legislative data groups definition. Those how to create, we'll just look into that when you start with the system. And other one more point is the just here. So normally we call as instance in case of VBS and Fusion. You can call as instance, but normally it's referred to use as a pod. Instead of calling as instance, we can call as pods. Instead of calling instance, we can say these are pods, different pods, pod. Okay, we'll be referring it as a pod. In one pod, you can create only one enterprise. That too, Oracle provides. They'll provide the default enterprise. You can just update the client name within that enterprise, and the rest of controls you can set up as your client business process required related to HR and payroll. So any questions here, please?
Lakshman, as you said, if we use division into our enterprise structure, it will make sense if we use the division into our COA. For example, if I use the division in my enterprise structure for my business purpose, and obviously we need that has to be included into my COA, then generally we used to have a kind of flexible qualifier. So what kind of flexible qualifier we should use to make more sense in our chart of accounts?
So see, division, if you are going to have a like something, some departments also within our chart of account, for that will be mapping with the cost center. And when you talk about divisions, if you are want to know that our profitability in the division levels also, in Fusion we have a more than one balancing segment flexible qualifiers. In EBS we have only one balancing segment, but here we got three: primary, secondary, and third balancing. So if you have a requirement of tracking your profitability at a division level, you may assign secondary balancing qualifier. Of course, here we call as labels. We'll be discussing that, but just by comparing with EBS, if you want to track your profitability division level along with your balancing segments, you can you can map another balancing segment flexible qualifier to divisions. If that is your that if you want to track the profitability divisions levels also, in that case you can use it. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
fine. So that's what we have to understand. Anyway, we'll start with the system at that time. If you are going to have further queries, definitely we can talk on that. For now, just try to take this information. So when you compare with EBS, how it is different, how it is similar, these are the points we have to understand. Okay, done. The next point here is roles. So before we talk about Fusion, okay, we'll talk about the relevant concept in EBS. EBS menus. Okay, in EBS we have menus, right? So in EBS, Oracle EBS, we have a menus. So when I talk about menus, we'll have a main menu. Within the main menu, what we can have? Submenus. Within the submenus, we can have functions. The function will have certain privileges. Now anyone please tell me, if I want to have access to any application related main menu or submenu or function, how to access? Anyone please? These are not questions, just discussion. So you can just immediately try to respond to this queries.
It's a profile option.
No, my question is, so we have a menu, submenus, and functions. I need access to specific submenu or main menu. So I need access to AP Navigate GUI 1. How to access?
This menu and the submenu is assigned to responsibility.
Yeah.
Responsibility.
Right?
Yes, you're responsible.
If you want to access anything, there is one logic called as responsibility. With the responsibility you can access. Okay, I could hear some noise from someone, please. Yeah. So the concept called as responsibility. Fine. Say for example, I created one responsibility. Say AP responsibility. Within that, I selected menu called as AP Navigate GUI 12, which we use in EBS case, and I selected the data group as a standard. And optionally, you may select all reports for payables request group. So you just selected all this information. Your responsibility is ready. Can you use that responsibility? Can we use that responsibility?
You have to assign it to the user.
Okay, I assign that responsibility to the user. Can we use it?
You
Yeah, we have to assign profile option.
Why?
The file option needs to be.
Yeah, why we have to assign profile option? Which profile?
Because we need to assign HR business group profile option, so employees can be cooperate with the incorporate with those profiles.
of data as well, as far as the operating unit and everything is concerned.
Exactly. So,
Actually, there are mandatory profile options that needs to be enabled for that.
correct.
Part, like.
Yeah, that's true. That is a point we require. So you have a responsibility. If you are going to have a just responsibility, the responsibility will provide the privileges to certain functionalities which are part of the responsibility at main menu or sub menu. Okay, but so say you have access to AP responsibility. When you have access to AP responsibility, you can access to invoice workbench or payment workbench or some other functions. But you are going to work for which data, which operating unit, that you have to map. If you take example of GL responsibility, you should map primary ledger with a GL responsibility. Then only you will be able to perform certain transactions. So which application will be standing at what level, that relevant data access you have to provide to the responsibility. So what we have to do is we have to assign that primary ledger and operating unit to responsibility. If you take example of AP, in case of GL just primary ledger, then when you go to this responsibility, within the responsibility through certain functions, you will be finding the operating unit name. By selecting that operating unit with the help of that primary ledger which is mapped, you will be able to enter the transactions and those can be accounted, right? So this responsibility no use. Just if you have a responsibility where you have a menu request group, data group, and you define it's ready, you may assign to user no use. If you can assign this responsibility where you map specific data definitions, these we can call as data, primary ledger, okay, where you can store the data. Here OU, the OU specific data, transactions. When you say data, here transactions. So this responsibility will have more meaning, okay, the complete meaning of usage. But this responsibility is not connected with any primary ledger or operating unit, there won't be any use, okay. So when you compare these points in Fusion applications, how this same, okay, kind of provisioning we have in the Fusion applications. In EBS, what we have, menus we have. In Fusion, instead of menus, that we call as roles, okay, we call as roles. In EBS, we have a menus to grant the access for any user through responsibility for certain functionalities. But in the Fusion, we have a concept called as roles. The menus concept only they given as a roles. Simple point. Okay, EBS menus are equal to Fusion roles. Okay, when you talk about these roles, the roles are classified and they given the naming convention for that. Okay, the naming convention. We have a different type of roles. Those are job roles and duty roles. Sorry. Duty roles and data roles, abstract roles. In Fusion applications, we have four type of roles. Just remember this point. In Fusion applications, we have four type of roles. Those are job roles, duty roles, data roles, abstract roles. What does it mean by job role? Its job role is similar to main menu. That's it. Say for example, if you take payables, the payables we have main menu called as AP Navigate GUI 12. Okay, so this consists of all payables related privileges. The same way in Fusion, we'll have a job role called as say payables manager. Within this, we'll have all the AP related privileges. So in EBS, to have access, all the AP related functionality will be maintained by using the menu in case of EBS. But in the Fusion, specific application related complete privileges will be maintained by job roles. Okay, that means EBS main menu is equal to Fusion job role. And within the main menu, we'll have a submenus in EBS. The submenus are equal to duty roles. Take example, you have a AP main menu, okay, called as AP Navigate GUI. Within that, I am taking the submenu called as invoices, invoice process. Other submenu you can say payment. The same way, duty roles also will have in the same way. There could be one duty role which will allow you to work on invoice process. Another duty role may allow you to work on payment related process. Okay, so the responsibility concept is not applicable in the Fusion. The EBS we have a functions, those same you call as privileges in Fusion. Even EBS also you can call as privileges. The naming convention they given as function, but Fusion we call as a privileges that doesn't falls under any role. That would be part of within the submenu here. So the privileges will be within the duty role. Duty role means equal to submenu. Within the submenu only will have a functions. The similar way within the duty role we will have a functions, but ideally we call as a privileges. No responsibility concept in the Fusion. But here we have a concept called as in EBS, we'll have AP responsibility. AP responsibility will be connected with the primary ledger or operating unit. This kind of representation we have that we call as data role. The data role is combination of job role plus your business unit. If it is going to be job role is related to GL, just your primary ledger. If it is going to be your subledger related job role, okay, AP related job role, a payables manager need access to business unit as well as primary ledger. In that case, you can say primary ledger as well as business unit. So that is the meaning of data role. Data role will have a job role access. Through job role will have access to specific data, primary ledger and business unit. However, responsibility is helping us to have access to particular functionalities to record the transactions against primary ledger or operating unit. So the data role is equal to responsibility in EBS, but not this responsibility. When you say this responsibility is not connected to anything, but here we taken the example AP responsibility which is connected with the primary ledger and operating unit. For this sort of responsibility definition, the data role is applicable. What we do once this definition is available in the EBS, this responsibility, okay, we will assign to user, right? That responsibility will assign to user, so that this user can have access to AP responsibility. Within the AP responsibility, with the help of menu, the privileges can be accessed through navigator and based on respective function by using the particular primary ledger support and operating unit selection. user can record the transaction. In Fusion also, the data roles can be assigned to user. Once you assign the data role to user will get, once they log into the instance, they can connect to the data role. The data role name may be payables manager. Okay, the job role. That means within the data role, we'll have a job role. The job role name may be payables manager. The payables manager role will have access to primary ledger and business unit, so that that user will be able to work on the system for the respective business process.
I have a question.
Please.
Yeah, so you are saying job role. I mean, data role is combination of job role and primary ledger and business unit, depending on the application.
Correct.
But why can't it be a duty role plus PL and business unit? Because you may not want everyone to be a super user, right? You may have roles based on the.
I got your point. Let me answer to that. So in EBS, say you have a main menu called as AP Navigate GUI. There is one user who require access to only invoice. In that case, what you will do? We'll create the custom menu, right?
Yes.
Create the custom menu.
Yes.
Within the custom menu, we'll include the sub menu, right?
Yes.
Ultimately,
yes.
you are creating the menu. Okay. Ultimately, you are creating the menu. Here also, if some user, these invoice and payment are duty roles. If any user require access to duty role called as invoice duty role. So invoice duty role and payment duty role. So let's talk about EBS. Say in EBS we have a submenu called as invoice. Can we assign invoice submenu directly to responsibility?
Unless until we create a custom menu.
Exactly. You have to give the menu name. Within that menu, the menu name you may write as a invoice submenu. Within that you have to include invoice submenu, right? You have to define the menu.
Yes.
Without defining the menu, you cannot provide any access to responsibility. Response level you cannot select. In the same way, duty roles directly you cannot assign to user. Okay, duty roles can be assigned to user by defining the job role. Now, one user require access to invoice duty role. Now, what I'll do is I'll create job role called as job role name. I may give as a duty role. I'll give the job name. I have to create the job role. The job role I'll give the name as invoice access. What I have to include within this job role? Specific duty role. Duty role is invoice duty role. We cannot assign duty roles directly to the user. The duty roles you can assign to the user with help of job role. So duty role, if you want to assign to any user, create job role for duty role, then you can assign the duty role to user.
Okay. So you are saying that like a job role can be also a custom role, I mean custom menu.
Yeah.
But it would be
a custom role. You'll be creating the custom role. However, you create the custom menu in EBS in the same way, we'll create the custom role here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So these are the points to understand. So these are the 4 type of roles.
Hi, Laxman.
In the Fusion. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, Laxman. Regarding the duty role, those roles are already Oracle predefined ones, or we need to define?
Yes. All are Oracle predefined. In Fusion also, see, when you say duty roles, these are the features which are available in the specific application. As a part of specific product, the list of features are classified into duty roles or as per EBS submenus, and those will be part of main menu here within the job role. These all are features which are predefined. So job roles, duty roles, and abstract roles. We'll talk about this. We have 4 type of roles what we discussed: job, duty, data, and abstract. Out of these 4, Job roles, duty roles, abstract roles, Oracle predefined, seeded roles, and as per a requirement you can create. But ideally, these two are predefined. Data roles, system will create automatically, or else we can create it as per our requirement. Okay, even job, duty roles, and abstract roles also you can create our own roles, which we call as custom roles. Fine. Okay, so these are the points we have to understand: job roles, duty roles, data roles, and abstract roles. Job roles are equal to EBS main menu, duty role is equal to EBS submenu, and data role is equal to EBS responsibility, which is connected with the primary ledger and operating net. You should include that point, otherwise the data role is not equal to plain responsibility in EBS. The data role is equal to the responsibility which is associated with the primary ledger and operating nets. What is the abstract role? If you talk about job role or duty role or data role, this will be pointing specific application related functionality. When I say job role, that may be payables manager or receivables manager or general accountant. When you say duty role, it may be invoice duty role or payment duty role or billing duty role or receipt duty role. Okay, and when I talk about data role, based on that combination it will get connected with a specific data, primary ledger data or operating net data. In case of fusion, primary ledger or business unit. But when I talk about abstract role, it is a generic role which is mapped with the employee, where if you assign this role to any user, the user will have a self-service related access, where if you assign this, say you have an employee called as ABC. For ABC employee, if you assign the abstract role, which is a generic common role, the ABC employee will have access to, okay, self service functionality access, maybe accessing the pay slips and creating the expense reports, whatever the expense they incurred, and submitting some request as a self-service activities. For those areas, this abstract role will give the access. Abstract role is not very specific to certain particular application. It is a common and a generic role which we have to map with every employee which we create in the system. We'll see that more detail level once we start with the system. It will give the privileges to submit the reports and to run the programs within the system. So in EBS, from any responsibility you can navigate to SRS window, right? Within the responsibility, if you have a request group, then only you can find out the reports or programs within that SRS window. But in the fusion, if you assign abstract role, then only you will be able to have access to similar to SRS window in fusion. If you don't assign, you cannot go over there to see, you cannot have access to the similar functionality. We'll see that abstract role once we start with the system. There you can understand more detail level. For now, just try to understand we have a 4 type of roles: job roles, duty roles, data roles, and abstract roles. So job roles, duty roles, abstract roles, Oracle is providing that you can use whatever required. When I talk about data roles, how data roles will be created? The data role combination is job role plus primary ledger business unit. When you say job role, within the job role you may have only one duty role, invoice only, but you have to create job role, then only you will be able to connect to these components. So how job roles will be created? How data roles will be created? Say for example, I am creating business unit. I created a business unit 1. Whenever you create the business unit 1, automatically system will create the data role for that. Say you have a one job role for payables called as, say, payables manager. Automatically system will assign your BU1 to your payables manager. This combination only we are calling as job role, data role. And once you create the business unit, you have to assign your primary ledger to business unit. That's how we do here. So after creating the business unit, you have to assign the primary ledger to business unit. Okay, whenever you create the business unit, automatically what system will do? The business unit will get assigned to job role. So this combination only we call as data role. So that means data roles will be created automatically whenever you create the business unit or primary ledger. When you create the primary ledger, GL related all data role system will create automatically. This data roles creation happens automatically up to release 11 version. Release 11. Okay, after release 11, they removed the data roles concept creation automatically. From release 12, the latest version which we are going to work, from release 12, how this logic will work is, say you created a primary ledger, system won't create any data roles. What you have to do is, you have to assign this primary ledger to specific job role. We have to do it through manual process, no automation. So say for example for GL we have one job role called as general accountant, who will have access to journal creation and other process. So after creating the primary ledger, you have to assign. So you created business unit. So this business unit you have to assign which subledger related application role required access to that BU, which will be standing at BU level for that role. Say payables, payables manager or payables supervisor or payables specialist. There are the different roles we have for payables. We'll see once we start with the payables more detail level. But here let's try to understand. So in release 12 environment, Fusion release 12, we create the primary ledger. That primary ledger we have to assign to specific role, and we create the business unit. The business unit access required for which role we have to assign in release 12. But up to release 11, before 11 we have release 12, release 9. Request you to mute from your end, please. There's some noise. Please make sure that you are just keeping on mute if you don't have any questions, please. Fine. Okay, up to release 11
Laxman,
can be 10.
Laxman, I have a question here.
Yep.
Is there any option, profile options role in Fusion?
Yeah, we are going to come to that point also. Yeah, we'll discuss on that. Release 8 or any version you can take. Release 9 or release 10. In all these previous versions, what happens is whenever you create primary ledger, automatically for primary ledger specific how many roles we have in the system, to all the roles, okay, for all the roles the primary ledger will get assigned. And whenever you create the business unit, so BU specific how many roles we have in the system which are managed with some role templates concept, automatic system will assign. That's how the data roles will get created. From 12 the logic they changed. System is not going to assign the primary ledger or business unit automatically to the relevant roles. What you have to do is, for which role, which primary ledger you want to assign, which business unit you want to assign, you can go and do through manual process. To assign the primary ledger or business unit, we no need to use any profile options, but still we have a profile options concept in the Fusion, but we no need to use any profile option to assign primary ledger or business unit with a specific role. So we'll see like in which scenarios we can use the profile option to complete your entire multi-year. See, when you are creating the multi-year, we'll use the different profile option: HR user type, MO operating unit, MO security profile, HR business group, okay, GL ledger name. All these profile options will use. These profile options you no need to use in the Fusion applications. Not required. Whatever we use as a part of EBS multi-arc structure definition, even you no need to use one profile option also. Without using any profile option, you will be able to build your enterprise structure. Okay, the profile options you can use to may set some default values. Okay, that drastically they reduce the usage of profile option. The same logic they brought with the concept called as data access for users that we'll see in the system. So max, we are not going to use the profile options, but to understand where and where we can use the profile option, that will be discussing in our classes. But for your primary ledger purpose, business unit purpose, you no need to use any profile options. Yeah, please.
So you said that until release 11, the system would automatically assign the job role to the primary ledger or the business unit.
I'm sorry, not job role, primary ledger to job role.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say we don't want. Let's say that it assigned the primary ledger 1 to a job role called payable manager, and then we decide we don't want to. We want to override that. So can we do that?
You cannot do that. If you don't want, don't use it.
But then how will I?
What is your requirement?
But then, let's say I want that primary ledger 2 should be assigned to a particular job role. So how do I achieve that?
Then create primary ledger 2. The primary ledger 2 also will get assigned to the same role as a separate definition.
Okay.
See, you have primary ledger 1. This primary ledger 1 will be associated with the general accountant. Then the combination will become general accountant PL1. Okay. Now you created primary ledger 2. So the primary ledger 2 also will get associated with general accountant. Now the definition will become general accountant PL2. Now, which data role you require, that you can assign to your user. That's all. If you assign this as a general accountant, the user can have access to primary ledger 2. If you assign this as a general accountant, that user can have access to primary ledger 1. That's it. That's how it works.
Okay.
Now two data roles, because we have two sets of data as a ledger 1 and ledger 2. Clear?
But this is called data redundancy, right?
That is the reason Oracle changed in 12. Unnecessarily system will create the data roles for all the roles which are available in the system. Again, there is some challenge which Oracle came across with this practice, where even this combination system will create, sometimes the data links are missing in the process of automation. So that's the reason from 12 Oracle given the option for which role, which BU or which primary ledger you want to assign, you can do it. That's how they given the manual process. Okay. So from 12 we don't have any data roles concept. Okay. Till 11 we have. Now from 12 system is not going to create any data roles. So equal to data roles will be doing the mapping through manual process. This is what we have to understand. Any questions here, please?
Laxman, I have two questions. So you are saying there are no data roles in from our 12,
Yes.
from 12 version.
Yes.
So there are only three roles: job roles, duty roles, and extract roles.
Exactly.
And the second question, is there any concept of multi-org access in Fusion?
Yes, we have the same multi-org access, MOAC, which we call a security profile. You can create the security profile. That's how you can limit access to specific enterprises, organizations. Say you have one user who need access to 3 business units. Yes, you can. The same concept we have in Fusion. What you see in EBS, we have in the Fusion. Okay. So any other questions here, please?
Hey, Laxman, the security, if that is the case, security profile, is it works based on the profile option, or as it works through the data role concept?
In case of EBS, will create the security profile that will be mapping with a responsibility by using, okay, MO security profile option. But here you no need to use it. So directly you can assign to the user. No profile option required. Clear? Okay. The points what we discussed here, these are all related roles. The roles always represent the access. So this you can call it as Fusion security. Now we are talking about how the security can be managed in the Fusion. In other words, this we call as this Fusion security we call as RBAC. Nothing but role based access control. Okay, we are talking about this now. Okay, we are talking about Fusion security, how the security can be managed with the logic of RBAC, role-based access control. In Fusion, what are the security model we have that we call as role-based access control? Based on the roles which you are going to assign to the user, the access will be controlled for specific functions or specific data objects. The data means primary ledger or business unit. Any questions on this, please?
Laxman, just to verify my understanding, as you said, now there are only 3 roles: job, duty, and abstract, and there is no responsibility at all. And if you want to assign primary ledger or BU, you can assign directly to job role. So it's like the way we assign in EBS a responsibility, we attach like PL and BU service. That's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. Fine. So any questions here, please? So when we see in the system, the same when you see in the system, it would be more and more clear for everyone. So anyway, before that, hope you just got the point. So any questions on this, please? Fine, no questions. The next point here is users. Okay, Fusion users. I'll say users in Fusion, users in Fusion applications. So when I talk about EBS, we create the users from system administrator responsibility. Okay. So in the Fusion, okay, the Fusion we have a different options to create. Before that, let's try to understand in terms of behavior and usage point of view how many type of users we have. Basically we have a 2 type of users. We have a 2 type of users in Fusion applications. Those 2 are, one is implementation user, the other user is employee user. Okay, we have a 2 type of users. One is implementation user and other user is employee user. We'll try to understand the term meaning what we are going to discuss, but as of now just make a note from where we can create the implementation user. The implementation user you can create from security console in the Fusion application. The security console will work as our system administrator. And the security console in system administrator, what you can do, you can create the, okay, let me write that. In system administrator you can create the users, you can assign the responsibilities, and you can create the custom menus. The similar task in Fusion you can perform by using the security console. You can create the users and you can assign the roles, any roles. What are the roles you want to assign to the user? Assign roles to users. However, we assign responsibilities to user in EBS and create custom roles in security console. Okay, primarily this is the purpose why we use the security console. It's a admin console, you can say. So to manage our security related activities, you can use the security console. Create users, assign roles to users, and create custom roles. All these activities you can do from security console. Implementation user also will be created from security console. In other words, you can say if you are going to create the user from security console, that user you can call as implementation user. Okay, we'll talk on this more. Just take this point as of now. So that means simple point here is the implementation user can be created from security console. And employee user, the employee user can be created from HCM, which is equal to HRMS in our EBS. The same HRMS solution, here they name it as a HCM. HCM stands for Human Capital Management. So within this you can have core HR, payroll, absence management, talent management, all the applications, the suite of HRMS. Okay, implementation user and employee user. So we know in EBS how we manage the user. So what we do is in EBS case, in EBS we'll create user. I'll say username is XYZ. The next step is we will create the employee in the HRMS. That employee will assign to user, right? This you cannot do in Fusion. In EBS you can do the separate definitions, user definition and employee definition separately. So the user, so and so user which you create in the system can be used by which employee is going to have that user name for system access, that you can map based on that assignment for the relevant processes can be managed, say approvals or some other activities. Okay, so we'll create the user and we'll assign the employee to user. This is how it happens in EBS application. So now we'll talk about Fusion. We have a two type of users, implementation user and employee user. First we'll talk about implementation user. So we'll create the implementation in the fresh instance, in the fresh product of Fusion instance. Okay, you can create only implementation user. You cannot create employee user. So just you may create implementation user called as ABC. ABC user. Username is ABC. You can create directly. You can create ABC user. But if you want to create employee user in the system, implementation user. Implementation username is ABC. Directly you can create. How to create? Just will go and give the name, username and set password. Done, ready. And when I talk about employee user, to create the employee user, say you are going to create employee user, say employee user name is XYZ. If you want to create employee user in the system, what you have to do is you have to provide username is XYZ and you have to provide employee details, and you have to provide the employee user is going to be associated with which legal entity and which business unit. So in the fresh instance you can create only implementation user. The reason in the first instance, how we can expect predefined legal entities and business units? Impossible. So that is the reason in the fresh instance first we'll create the implementation user which cannot be connected with the employee definition. You cannot assign employee to implementation user. Okay, but when I talk about employee user is nothing but employee and user definition. That means when you are providing the employee details, for the along with the employee details we'll give the username called as XYZ. That's how the employee user will be defined. The employee user is nothing but user plus employee. Implementation user means user only. Can we associate employee with the implementation user? No. The implementation user will remain as a just user, cannot be associated with the employee. Okay, so this is the point we have to understand. From where we can create the implementation user? From the security console. From where we can create the employee user? From HCM, human capital management. To create the employee user, what details we require? Legal entity and business unit. In first instance, you don't find any legal entities and business units. That is the reason what we do is, first, in the first instance, first we'll create the implementation user. With the help of implementation user, you will complete your enterprise definition like primary ledgers, okay, legal entities, business units, inventory organizations, and your enterprise definition, all you will complete. So once these are ready, then you can go and create the employee user. At the time of employee user, legal entity and business unit mandatorily you have to provide. Without providing the legal entity and business unit information, you cannot create the employee user in the system. So what is the difference between the implementation user and employee user in the system process? One difference we discussed. Employee implementation user cannot be associated with any employee. Implementation user cannot be associated with any employee. But employee user is nothing but employee plus user definition. That means the employee user is always inbuilt get assigned with the employee. Okay, the definition point of view, this is a difference. Okay, we cannot assign employee to implementation user. For employee user, you no need to assign employee. The reason, employee user definition itself employee. So when we talk about financial point of view, procurement point of view, there are some other points that we'll discuss once we get into the application. But finance point of view, what is the difference? As an implementation user, you can do all the setups in the system. You cannot create supplier sites. Okay. Being an implementation user, you cannot create the supplier sites. But employee user can create supplier sites. This is the one point you can take as of now. There is some reason also why. For that, again, we have to talk about some procurement agent definition, that connectivity and all as a part of process. We'll see that. As of now, you just take the simple point. Okay, so implementation user can create the supplier but not supplier site. But employee user can create procurement supplier sites. Why? Let's talk about that point also. So who can create the, so in case of EBS, what we do is we'll create employee, and the employee will create as a buyer, right? And purchasing, employee will create as a buyer. We'll be converting employee as a buyer by adding the employee into buyers list. The same way, now you have it two users, ABC and XYZ. You tell me, out of this ABC and XYZ, who are employees? So XYZ only employee. That means XYZ you can create as a buyer in the Fusion application. Okay, which user is created as a buyer? That buyer, that user only can create the supplier sites. ABC user is which user? Implementation user. Implementation user can be associated with the employee definition? No. So you cannot convert ABC as a buyer. You cannot convert. When ABC user is not acting as a buyer, the sites also you cannot create from that user. That means which user is classified as a buyer, that user only can create supplier sites. Which user can be classified as a buyer? Which user is employee user. Only employee user can be created as a buyer in the Fusion application. So that user, which user is classified as a buyer, which user is already employee user, that user only can create the supplier sites. Here ABC user is implementation user. Implementation user doesn't have any employee association. That is the reason implementation user you cannot create as a buyer. So since the user is not classified as a buyer, that user is not allowed to create the supplier sites. In Fusion applications, instead of calling as a buyer, we call as a procurement agent. That means only procurement agent only can create the supplier site. There is a meaning in that. Only procurement agent is allowed to create the supplier sites. Who can act as a procurement agent? Employee user can act as a procurement agent, not implementation user. Yeah, please.
Laxman, practically in support projects, like once the Fusion went live, like the end user can ask the support team create supply site on behalf of them, right? So then how can we handle that situation?
So in the production environment, okay, in the production environment, what you can do is you can just use any one of the other employee login credentials. Otherwise, we have a process called as creating some basic definition of employee users. Instead of going with the core HCM, complete employee user definition, for these purposes, you can create the basic employee definition that employee you can use for these definitions if at all you require. Otherwise, you can go with the practice of any existing employee related credentials you can use and you can define it.
Practically, it is against to soft skills, right? If you use the employee login details.
You know that provision you have, otherwise use some the actual employee just whose employee records are very detailed definitions.
I have a question, Laxman.
Please.
Yeah, so I just want your confirmation whether my understanding is correct on that, like based on the answer which you just gave now. Let's see, we have, let us say we have a company which is not having any purchasing, like they are just like a logistics company, they are just a courier company.
I got your point. In that case, still, even the company, see, the client is going to use only financials. Even if they are going.
Yes, and they are not even using HCM. They are not. They are having an HCM as a separate application.
Yeah, don't mind. I'm going to give that point. Just let me talk about it. So even they are not going to use any other applications other than financial. Still, procurement agent we have to create, because in finance we use the supplier definition, right? So when we are going to work on financials, what are the dependency setups we have to do from other area of applications? All would be available within the financials only. Even procurement agent definition is not related to financials. Still, Oracle will give the shared function where finance people can create the procurement agent. Other point is employee. Yes, employee user definition is mandatory in this process. Even if you are not going to implement HCM, human capital management, okay, still they'll be giving the provision access to go and create the employee definition, which really required to run this specific application process, which will become dependency. That's it.
Okay, so you're saying like just like they give us like inventory roles to create the inventory orgs, even though we don't use it, but they give us those roles just
exactly. They'll allow you to create, but if you don't have any subscription from Oracle, they won't help you. Okay, help you on the issues which you result on the specific process, since you don't have subscription. But the definitions they will allow up to the level which really require to run the specific area of applications, for which applications you have a access, subscription from Oracle.
So we'll be just creating like a generic procurement agent just to fulfill this criteria, right?
Support your finance process, nothing but supplier sites creation to support it. Yes, that Oracle allows, even if you don't have license for subscription for procurement and HCM. Yeah, that is a dependency. These applications will get dependency. The dependency related setups may be related to any application. Those are allowed. Yeah, fine. Any other questions here, please?
One quick question. As we discuss about implementation user can't create supply side. Other than that, there are any other functionality which is restricted by the implementation user, which can be done by employee user.
Yes. Finance point of view, this is only the point, but procurement point of view, there are many. So if you want to create any document, Okay, if you want to create any document in the procurement, it can be normal purchase order or purchase requisition or agreements. Anything can be created by only employee user. Again, which employee user is classified as a procurement agent. In Fusion applications, when you are creating the procurement agent, see in case of EBS, when you are creating the buyer, just you will be adding that employee name into buyer's list. But here the definition is totally different. When you are converting an employee as a procurement agent, you will be providing you will be specifying this procurement agent can work on which documents, whether this procurement agent is allowed to create the suppliers or not, this procurement agent can create the requisitions or not, this procurement agent can involve in the sourcing process or not, this procurement agent can do the some analysis related reports process can be done or not, and agreements can be created or not. All this set of document privileges you can set up. Along with that, this procurement agent can be allowed to access other procurement agent documents or not. So these are all the controls we can set it up. That's how it's slightly different from EBS case. We'll see. We'll be creating the procurement agent. It's mandatory. Otherwise, you cannot work on the supplier sites creation process in the system. Again, if procurement agent is going to create suppliers and supplier sites, the procurement agent require the roles, which roles allow that procurement agent to create the suppliers. Okay, just being a procurement agent they cannot create, they need additional roles also. We'll see that complete process.
One question,
Please.
can we say that implementation user is only for doing the setup configuration type of task, or any other means functionality of implementation user?
See, implementation user and employee user, any user can do the configuration and can involve in the business process, transaction process also, but implementation user cannot perform all the activities, all the setup, all the kind of these kind of setups. I mean to say, supplier side cannot be created, and the procurement side documents cannot be created by implementation user. The employee user can involve in all the activities. Setups are
But
full privileges, and that too.
okay, but the core setup can also be done by the implementation.
One point, let me add another point here. The implementation user or employee user can do all the setups. How? To give the access to those setup part, again we have to assign the roles. With the help of roles, any user can do the setups, but even if you have a role access to implementation user, the implementation user cannot create the supplier side, since the by default the definition is implementation user.
Okay, but the employee user can create the primary ledger setup and can do the setup for legal entities and all.
Yeah, employee user can create anything. For that we have a separate roles.
Okay.
You have to give the privileges for what are the privileges required to create the primary ledger. That privileges you can give to any user.
Okay.
Yeah, there are certain roles.
So, but what kind of roles will be assigned to a person who is supporting after the implementation is done, like a functional supporting?
Yeah, that we will discuss before we go and create the user in the system. Will talk on that. Okay, primarily there would be three roles which we have to assign to any user who is going to work as a implementation consultant or support consultant. We'll talk on that.
So Laxman, you're saying that by default the employee user will get the implementation.
Your voice is very low. Your voice is very low. If you don't mind.
You're saying that the employee user will get
Same, no change. I cannot understand. I'm sorry. Just you can just check the audio connection from your side. Maybe some. Try to just.
Am I audible now?
There is no big difference. Okay, but anyway, just go ahead. Let me try.
Laxman, am I audible now?
Yeah, now it's better somewhat. Yeah, please.
I'm just asking, and then you mean to say the employee user will get the implementation user role by default?
No. Okay, just you can create implementation user for the purpose, but you have to give the privileges to do the implementation. In the same way, employee user you will create in the with the definition of employee association. If you want to make the employee user to do the setups, again you have to give the privileges. By given privileges, anyone can act, anyone can do the implementation irrespective of user type.
Okay.
But there are certain limitations. That's what we are discussing. Being an
Yes, sir.
implementation user, even the user has a privileges, they cannot create supplier sites. Okay. Any other questions here, please?
Lakshman, in
Actually, I just want to ask that what what employee user cannot do that implementation user can do,
There's
means what is the
no
means
point. No, there is
additional role of implementation
no,
user?
no. There is nothing like that. There is nothing like that. There is no. You cannot say so and so activity cannot be done by employee user. Everything can be done by employee user. Employee user will have a full privileges for everything. Okay, you can.
I think it's only when you have a fresh installation, then we need the implementation user first, because you cannot create an employee user directly.
That's what. That's what. The same. This is the point. So if you want to create employee user, okay, legal entity and business units are required. So that is the reason you have to start with the implementation user. Okay, then you can just switch to employee user definition. That's how you can do it.
Okay.
Yep. In case of production environment and all, just once users employee users definitions are ready, you can use any one of the employee user for your implementation configuration, and later you may remove the privileges to that employee user. That's how you can manage the production environment.
All right.
Yep. Fine. Now,
Lakshman, in development and instance, do we have both the implementation user and employee user, right?
yes, any environment, it's all about we will create. We will create. Okay, if it is fresh, you should start with implementation user. Once you complete required setups, then only you can just create the employee user. When your LE and primary ledger and business units are ready, then you can plan to create employee user. Okay, fine. Any other questions here, please? Fine, no questions. Now we'll talk on this point. If you want to work as implementation user in the system environment, which roles are required? Implementation user. You tell me. So if you want to work as, if you want to do the implementation, if you want to complete all the configuration case of EBS, which access you require? Anyone?
We need a sysadmin and super user responsibilities most of them.
See, you have a fresh instance. You have a fresh instance. You are going to work as a finance implementation consultant. Which access you require?
I think this admin, yeah.
Just sysadmin, that's all, nothing else. Okay. So if you have access to system administrator responsibility, you can start from the scratch. You can create with that. First we'll create the responsibilities. Okay, we'll be just once you're done with that, we'll be creating the multi-org structure, so that you can create along with all the responsibility, you'll create HRMS responsibility. From there you can create all the organizations, business groups, and everything you can create by using the profile options. You can map. Okay, then you can create the users and you can associate those however it is required, and you can, if required, you can create the custom menus, request groups, everything you can create, and you can complete the module specific setups. That's how you can get ready. So equal to system administrator response, which gives us the privileges to do all the setups. So here we have a different roles, we'll see that. Primarily we have to assign 3 roles to the specific user, which user is going to work as an implementation consultant. So those roles are application implementation consultant. So this is the one role which you have to assign to the user, and another role is IT security manager, and third role is employee. So if you assign these three roles to any user, implementation user or employee user, any user, if you assign these three roles to any user, that user can work as a implementation user. So if you assign this application implementation consultant, this will give the access to configuration area. All the configurations you can do in functional setup manager, FSM, or let me write in this way. So application implementation consultant role will give you the access to FSM. FSM stands for functional setup manager, FSM. So for any application related configuration you can do from functional setup manager. Okay, so we'll discuss on this more detail level. I just taken here the same function setup manager. We'll talk on that, what exact purpose and all. For now, just take the simple point. If you assign application implementation consultant role, this role will give you the access to FSM. So by using FSM, you can do the any application related setups. If you want to configure payables, you can do it. If you want to configure receivables, you can do GL or any application configuration you can do by using the functional setup manager. The very high level simple point you can take, by using FSM you can complete the setups. That's it. So if you assign IT security manager role to any user, this will connect you to security console. Already we discussed. Okay, the security console, what you can do here we discussed, right? Security console, we can create the users. Okay, we can assign the roles to users, we can create the custom roles, so that user require access to all those, right? New users creation, role assignments, custom roles definition. Okay, so IT security manager role will give you the access to security console. With the help of security console, you can create the users and you can assign the roles to users and you can create the custom roles. So employee role, the employee role will give the access to self-service web access, self-service as well as reports access. Okay, so that is the employee role usage, self-service access. Every employee should have access to self-service data, the data related access, and report generation equal to SRS window in EBS. Here we have a window called as ESS job page that we'll discuss once we see in the system. Okay, so for these different purposes we have to assign minimum these three roles, so that that user can start working on the system with full privileges. But that user is going to be implementation user, which is created from security console. That user will get stuck at the time of supplier side creation. So by the time it will be all the setups ready, you can create employee user, and for employee user will be assigning all these three roles. Then employee user will get full privileges in the system environment to work as implementation consultant, including the supplier site creation privileges. So that's how the implementation setups can be completed. And to have a transaction related process, we will be having the separate roles. Remember, we have a roles to perform the setups. So we have a different roles to perform the setups and transaction related process. Okay, if you want to do the payable related configuration, this role is enough. But if you want to work on accounts payables related invoice creation and payment creation, separate roles we have to assign to the user. Transaction process, separate roles, and configuration process, separate roles. Roles are classified as a configuration roles and transaction process related roles. Okay, so this is how we have. Any questions on this, please?
You said that like for the when you have the employee role, you have self-service or reports available. So by reports, you mean only specific to the employee reports, or
no, like all reports? This user have access to which roles? Say this user have access to payables. Okay.
Yeah.
Payables reports. If this user is going to have access to receivable related reports, that how to
So
give the access, how to restrict the access for specific user or specific role reports, that also we'll see. Yeah, please go ahead.
So if I have to, as a functional support person, if I have to access such reports for debugging something like a trial balance or maybe a receipt register or something, then I need to first have the roles which are related to the transactional processes.
Exactly. So in EBS, what we do is the function access you can get through menu, and report access you can get through request group, right?
Right.
But in Fusion, these two are not separate. Within the role only, you can have a functional access, and reports also you can include in the role only. Okay,
Okay.
that's how it works. Everything in the role, functionality access and reports access, everything will be part of role only. We don't have a separate definition, same as EBS, menu and request group, where everything is one. So any questions here, please?
Yeah, just one quick last thing. So while implementation, will create as the implementation user, plus we'll assign all these three roles, plus we'll add a transaction process roles.
No. So initially when you start with implementation, these three roles are enough. Once all the setups are ready, okay, so to test that functionality, then we'll be assigning that transaction related roles, process related roles.
Okay. And as a function consultant, we can use all sort of these three roles plus transaction processing role
Yeah,
for
definitely.
testing and all sort of job.
After doing the setups in the test environment, we have to test. So for that reason, we have to assign.
So it acts as a super user.
Yes, exactly. It will be acting as a super user for complete configuration process. So the consultant, we can say, will be acting as a consultant. We can say. So where we'll get complete privileges. In case of EBS, if you have access to accounts payable super user, within that we'll have a configuration access as well as invoice creation, payment creation. But here that sort of access, they separated. Setup roles are different, process roles are different.
So Laxman, now here for implementation person, three roles what we discussed, is it similar to three job roles we assign to this implementation user, right? So these are like system build job roles.
Yeah. Yes.
Can we equate that?
These are predefined job roles. Application implementation consultant, IT security manager, two falls under job roles. This also you can take as a job role, but Oracle is naming this employee role as an abstract role because employee is a common role, right? Irrespective of payables user or receivables user or HR user, they are by default employees. That is the reason this role will treat as a abstract role, which will give access to self-service and report related. And these two are job roles. This is abstract role. That's it.
Fine. Yeah.
So any other questions, please? If no questions, we can wind up for today. We'll connect tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll try to spend minimum just 2 hours. More than 2 hours will be spent. Let's see how to create the implementation user. We'll create how to create the implementation user. We'll try to understand more on the functional setup manager. I request you to please mute. See, when I'm speaking, please don't unmute. And again, there is some noise. If there is no noise, even if you unmute, no issues. But we are getting noise. I'm trying to unmute, mute, but you are keep trying to unmute from your end, please. Okay. So these are the points. Any questions from anyone, please?
One last question, Laxman.
Please.
In our initial discussion, as you mentioned that in Fusion there is a pod is the one instance basically we call as a instance as a pod here.
Call as pod.
And yeah, so in one pod you are saying that we can create only one enterprise, right?
There will be default enterprise. You don't need to create also. There won't be option to create also. There will be default enterprise. So there will be name also default enterprise that you will be changing with your client name. If you are going to do the implementation for XYZ group, just overwrite that name, update that name. Rest of setups and controls you can set as per your business requirement.
Okay.
Yep.
So I just, things comes in my mind. For example, for our ERPTREE.com, we have a Fusion Cloud Pod, and all the participants down the line going to create own setups. So how that thing happen in one pod? Multiple user will able to participant will able to create.
That structure. See, the setups will be creating as a separately. Based on what you set up, that's how that will get connected. There is nothing to do with the enterprise. Enterprise will just default the information which is specific to. The enterprise. See, if you are going to do any kind of HR and payroll, when you say enterprise, that will always works for HR and payroll process only. When you are going to define something for, say, you are doing the implementation for 2 countries, say US and UK. US you will do the setups and the UK you will do the setups. For these 2 definitions, whatever you have in the enterprise level, those will get defaulted. But as per US requirement, you can override at US related legislative data groups and HR organization definition level, and UK whatever system is defaulting from the enterprise level, enterprise setup, those you can override at UK related legislative data group definitions and UK related HR organization definition. For finance, SCM and all other applications, enterprise is not going to impact. Enterprise related setups will impact only HR related solution. Okay.
Okay, so for example, down the line, if I started a setup into the our ERP instance, so can I create by my name like Pankaj Enterprise, and somebody is there Sunil, he can create by Sunil Enterprise in the same.
That's what I'm talking about. Only one will be having. You go and change with your name. Other person will come and they will remove your name. They'll place their name. That's it. You can update it. If everybody is going to create with their own name, those are multiple definitions, right? We don't call as one.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it. Thank you.
Yeah, fine.
So this pod and enterprise is not one-to-one linkage, right? So under one pod we can have multiple enterprise. Is it true?
See, pod means instance. Pod means instance. We discussed as in one instance, one enterprise. Instance only we are calling as pod. That means in one pod, one enterprise. Both are same.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
And does Oracle provide, like if we have a SaaS kind of subscription, does Oracle provide us with the test pod and dev pod?
Any subscription they'll provide by default 2. By default 2. If you need more than 2, you have to pay extra, they'll provide. They'll provide pre-pod and pod. Or ideally you can call as development instance and production instance. 2 they'll provide. Okay. 2 pods they'll provide for every client. So any other questions here, please?
Yes, Laxman, I have one question.
Please.
Suppose any client took only subscribe only for single module, suppose financials. So whichever modules are required to do the setups like HCM, as you have talked about,
those will get access for that. Those you can use up to complete these finance module related setups. You should not start using those modules. That's how they'll restrict. Setups you can complete which are dependency setups. Dependent setups, what are the access you require, you'll get it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fine, thanks. Okay, that's all for today. Tomorrow we'll connect same time. We'll have a session for minimum 2 hours tomorrow also, and we'll start with the system tomorrow. Okay, we'll start with a system related work. We'll see how to create the implementation user, how to assign the roles, how to run some synchronization programs, and what is the purpose, how it works. These points we'll be discussing in the tomorrow session. Okay, so that's all for today. We'll connect tomorrow same time. Have a good day and good night. Thank you all.